Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning from the brave, resilient, and confident women of Pakistan. In the creation of Pakistan, our women played a major role. In 1947, we got our independence, and exactly 7 years later, our first female governor of a province was placed, Begum Rana Liaquat Ali Khan. Then we saw Muhtarama Fatima Jinnah contesting a presidential election in the country in 1966. In 1988, we saw the first female youngest Muslim Prime Minister, Benazir Bhutto, in Pakistan. Our seats were reserved at 17% in 2002 and 33% for the grassroots level at the same time. Today we have very dynamic cabinet ministers serving in various ministries all over the country. We have successful female CEOs. We've had a female governor of the state bank. We have footballers, cricketers, swimmers, climbers, a 3-star general in the Pakistan Army recently appointed, a judge in the Supreme Court of Pakistan, Aisha Malik Sahiba, was appointed recently. And then the focus of our Prime Minister, Imran Khan, is on the economic empowerment of women. His dream program of 144 billion is focusing at 98% only on the women in our country. Please come to Pakistan and see what we are doing out here. I extend a hand of friendship to the women of the world.
Hello, I'd like to begin by saying thank you for this space. My name is Julieta Martinez. I am a Chilean activist for climate justice and gender equality, and I am the founder of the global action platform Tremendas, a platform that brings together thousands of girls around the world to carry out projects of social impact and to show them that they are not spectators of change, but protagonists of it. Now, I would like to ask you all a question. Have you ever wondered why Generation Z is constantly talking about intersectionality? Why is there a need to generate meeting points, connections between issues that affect our society? For years, we have been trying to solve problems from isolated agendas, from boards of 10 people, 5 people deciding our future and present. It is time to change our way of creating solutions. It is time to connect gender inequalities with the climate crisis. It is time to say loud and clear that the climate crisis has a woman's face. 70% of the world's poorest people are women. 80% of climate refugees are women and girls who are marginalized, who do not have access to the internet. And this, in the context of a pandemic, means no access to education. An educated girl not only improves her quality of life, but allows her to change the world and change it for the better. The Drawdown Project estimates that if we gave all the girls in the world access to education and family planning, we could produce up to 105 gigatons, yes, 105, by the year 2050. The Brook Institution posits that for every extra year of schooling for girls, countries' climate resilience to natural disasters improved by up to 3.2 points on the Endigane scale. The science is more than clear. For sustainable development, we need educated girls and women to be present in processes in decision-making around climate action. Those who are the most affected should have more space and voice at the decision-making tables, especially in the private sector. Women to provide a gender perspective to plans for resilience, circular economy, adaptation, and mitigation, sexual and reproductive rights, We need a gender perspective to reach the sustainable future that we all talk so much about. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words to you today. This is an important gathering of leaders, not just from business, but also from government, civil society, philanthropy, academia, and the United Nations. You are meeting to discuss how the private sector can accelerate gender equality, disrupt bias, and unlock leadership, entrepreneurship, and innovation to tackle the world's greatest challenges. It is a critical agenda, and it is a timely event. Climate change is the most significant, alarming, and rapidly escalating crisis facing humanity. The science is clear. We are pushing our planetary boundaries at our peril, and some of those boundaries are, in no uncertain terms, at a breaking point. To say humanity stands at a crossroads is a broad understatement. Our action or inaction over the next few years will largely determine the world that our children and their children will get to live in a few decades from now. This is why this must be a decade of action. And it is not for governments to act alone. It's time for every person, government and business throughout the world to make decisions that reflect and respect those boundaries that constitute the physical limits of our planet. So, what do we need to bend the curve and get us on the right trajectory? We need to rapidly raise climate ambition in order to lower emissions and build resilience, with strong support from finance and technology. We know what needs to be done, and we know how to do it. It's crucial that all sectors and all jurisdictions urgently, if they have not done so already, begin applying a climate lens with respect to their planning, policy, investment, and regulatory processes. Business and civil society must do the same with respect to daily decisions. We need climate leadership across all levels of society, and we need different, innovative approaches to old and new problems. The climate emergency will impact 100% of the people on this planet. Presently, we are nowhere near to gender parity when it comes to decision making, almost wherever you look. Solutions to climate change cannot continue to be dictated by far less than 50% of the population. It's time to change this. We need more women involved at every level of society, and particularly in leadership roles. This fundamental change to the status quo is one powerful way to create an alternative approach for addressing the central challenges that we face today. The UNFCCC Gender Action Plan calls for women's full, equal, and meaningful participation in the UN climate process, and to ensure a prominent role for women in decision-making and in climate action. Addressing barriers to women's full and equal engagement and contribution to climate policy and action starts at the top. I therefore call on all CEOs, board members, and executives to lead their businesses in applying a climate and gender equality lens to all decisions and aspects of the business. I recommend starting with who is leading and has the opportunity to lead in your own organization. Colleagues, we are in this together. This means that everyone, all of humanity, must be participating in, contributing to, and benefiting from climate action. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure on the occasion of Target Gender Equality Live to be able to share with you some reflections on how the private sector can play a really vital role in ending bias, in adding innovations, and in really catalyzing change through a focus on gender equality. The private sector has been at the forefront of driving change on issues related to sustainability for several decades now. We have seen how the private sector, when it takes the issue of sustainability seriously, can make changes in its recruitment, business practices, corporate strategy, supply chains, and other aspects of operations in order to drive meaningful change. However, we know that on the ESG spectrum, there has been much more attention paid to the E than there has been to the S and the G. And within the S, there has not yet been enough attention to gender as a catalyst for change. Happily, this is changing. And what is it, you might ask, that the private sector can do to drive really substantive change through a focus on gender equality? First, the private sector, as an employer, and the largest employer in many parts of the world, can do very well, if it chooses to, in intentionally recruiting more female talent. But it's not enough to recruit talent, it's also important to mentor it and to promote it. And the private sector has an affirmative obligation to ensure that leadership teams reflect gender and other diversity requirements as well as opportunities. Sadly, many leadership teams today do not reflect an equal number of women in management positions compared to men. This needs to change. The private sector can also support gender equality and catalyze change by ensuring that female labor force participation, which has dropped off tremendously during the pandemic, is nurtured and it is actually increased. To do this, the private sector needs to invest in ensuring that women have support infrastructure, including care facilities, paid parental leave, paid paternity leave, and other measures such as flexible work, which enable women to balance demands of work and life. Additionally, the private sector can ensure that gender equality are a fundamental aspect of business strategy and not just charitable contributions or corporate social responsibility. Women can be suppliers, consumers, as well as a segment of society that is specifically focused on by the private sector in its purchasing decisions, in its procurement decisions, as well as other decisions having to do with giving women more access to resources and business opportunities. Finally, it is worth noting and reflecting on the fact that before the pandemic, estimates were that it would take 99 years to achieve gender equality. Post-pandemic, the estimate is that it will take us 136 years to achieve gender equality. This is why we need to bring a sense of urgency to the gender equality agenda. And one thing that private sector companies can consider doing as part of their efforts to do better on gender is to sign up for the Women's Empowerment Principles, a framework developed by UN Global Compact together with UN Women, which provides areas of improvement and opportunity for firms to consider as they think about how to do even better in their journey towards gender equality. We have 6,200 companies in the world who have already signed up for the Women's Empowerment Principles. And if you have not done so yet, we encourage you to take a look at the Women's Empowerment Principles and consider becoming a signatory to this initiative, which will give you access to learning, benchmarking, and information to help improve all aspects of gender equality in your operations. Thank you very much.